Glad you could be with us this morning for Pat's Papers. I'm Pat Kiernan. We do this every day, going through the nation's newspapers to bring you the highlights. We'll start today with an interesting story on the front page of USA Today. 27 years after Adam Walsh was killed, police in Florida say they have solved the murder. The story's on the front page of USA Today with a photo of the little boy's father, John, who created the TV series America's Most Wanted after his 6-year-old boy was killed. Investigators say an extensive review has proven that convicted serial killer Otis Toole killed Adam Walsh in 1981. He had long been the prime suspect in the case. Also on the front page of USA Today, an illustration of the long line at the White House. The story says few presidents have been confronted with the urgent and varied pleas being made to Barack Obama. On the same day that pirates seized 2 more ships along the coast of Africa, the UN Security Council voted unanimously to authorize land and air attacks on pirate bases in Somalia. A report in the Miami Herald says this is likely one of the last foreign policy initiatives of the Bush administration. Also in the Herald this morning, a story from Australia. A court there says it's okay for debt collectors to use Facebook to serve legal notices on people. U.S. Facebookers don't have to worry yet. Social networking websites are not on the list of acceptable ways to deliver legal documents. Illinois lawmakers insist they can fairly investigate Governor Rod Blagojevich. They opened their unprecedented impeachment proceedings against him yesterday. The Chicago Tribune reports on the governor's week-long silence. He has still been working. He signed a bill into law yesterday. According to an aide, he was reviewing prison inmate petitions for clemency. The lead story in the New York Times today, the decision by the Federal Reserve to cut its key interest rate to zero, or to nearly zero anyway. The story says the decision brought the United States to the zero-rate policies that Japan used for years to fight deflation. That Federal Reserve rate cut is illustrated quite dramatically on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. At no point in the past 50 years have interest rates been set so low. The San Francisco Chronicle offers some perspective on what this might mean to you if you're in the market for a mortgage. Most banks, including San Francisco's Wells Fargo, immediately cut their prime rate to 3.25% from 4%. The last time it was that low was 1955. One other note from the Wall Street Journal, it is one of many papers with stories about the SEC's admission that it had been credibly tipped off about possible fraud at Bernard Madoff's investment firm. This is the fraud that could add up to $50 billion. The first tips came in 9 years ago. The Journal says the SEC is making an extraordinary admission that it did not take those red flags seriously enough. From Detroit, a move illustrating just how tough it is for the newspaper business, the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News are going to stop their home delivery on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. They will still publish a newsstand edition on those days, and they'll make the stories available online. Home delivery will still happen on Thursdays and Fridays and weekends when ad sales are stronger. An editorial compares the situation of the Free Press to that of the U.S. auto industry, saying it is time for fresh thinking. In the San Francisco Chronicle, a nice picture on the front page of a man cross-country skiing in Berkeley. At higher elevation, some of the California ski resorts have seen 4 feet of snow since Saturday. Southern California has lots of headlines for its earthquakes and wildfires, but it's actually one of the safer places in America. The LA Times with details of a study that found more deaths come from natural disasters elsewhere in the country. The big natural disaster killers are extreme heat and cold, flooding, and tornadoes. Earthquakes typically kill very few people. In the Cleveland Plain Dealer, a woman treated at the Cleveland Clinic has become the first recipient of a face transplant in the U.S., the most extensive facial transplant ever performed, and only the 4th in the world. About 80% of the patient's face was replaced with skin and muscles harvested from a cadaver. The headline on page 9 of the New York Post calls Dana Perino the sole survivor. The White House press secretary had a black eye yesterday. She was hit by a microphone in that confusion that followed the shoe-throwing incident in Baghdad on Sunday. Also in the Post, an ugly family dispute involving actor Peter Falk. He's 81 years old now, suffering from Alzheimer's. The Post says in California his daughter's going up against her stepmom over whether somebody should take over his affairs so he's not susceptible to fraud. From Houston, the Chronicle reporting that the 2 members of Congress who have spoken the most in the House in the past few years are both Texans, Ted Poe and Sheila Jackson Lee. Poe says, "Where I come from, people expect me to say what's on my mind." From the sports pages of the New York Times, looking ahead to a weekend event, Evander Holyfield is trying again, 46 years old now, trying for a boxing title in a match in Zurich on Saturday against the 7-foot-tall Russian Nikolai Valuev. Holyfield says this comeback is a lesson in perseverance to his children. More Americans are driving without car insurance. A story in the personal journal section of the Wall Street Journal says the sour economy has more drivers letting their insurance lapse, yet they're still driving. The journal says if you're hit by an uninsured motorist, you may have to sue to recover costs, and many uninsured motorists have few assets. From the Washington Post, some gift ideas for the cook on your list. The favorite everyday cookbook is called Whole Grains for Busy People. The story says this book might actually get you to prepare healthier meals at home. And the Seattle Times has some helpful tips on getting ready for winter driving from someone who should know. Elijah Johnson drives the bus for the Seattle Thunderbirds hockey team, and that means long stretches of winter driving between the team's games. He says the key for those winter roads is managing your speed, because it's braking on icy roads, he says, where you get into the most trouble. And that's our look at what's in the nation's newspapers this morning. I'm Pat Kiernan. Thanks for joining us. Go to patspapers.com, where you will find the complete list of all of the stories we featured today, along with links to the individual newspaper websites.